Oh, good Lord, there's 10 of us now. Right. Good evening again, everybody.
Good evening, Nick.
Lovely to see you all. We're back down to 9. Who left? Anyway, yeah, it's here. Welcome to the Morden, whatever it is. Sorry, I've had a mind blank there. The community forum, and we're here in our first. Going to go straight into the first item, which is hearing from Olivia McKay about the Warm and Well project. Which, how long has it been going on with the guild for now?
3 years.
So Wimbledon Guild started this off 3 years ago. I remember seeing a presentation, and you're going to tell us how it's getting on. Thank you very much.
I am indeed.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, hello, everybody. Hello, thank you for having me. My name's Olivia and I work at Wimbledon Guild, and I'm the Winter Warmth Engagement Officer for the Warm and Well programme. So I'll just give you a bit of background on the programme and then I'll sort of go into detail about what we do. So we started January 2019. And our main focus is energy efficiency and helping Merton residents lower their bills, and we also assist on paying bills as well with a fuel voucher. So started in 2019, and we're in partnership with Merton Council, Age UK and Thinking Works. Thinking Works play quite a big role in it, so I'll start on their section. So Thinking Works is a free service, and they can offer free home assessments for energy efficiency, as well as giving specialist advice on how to lower your bills and be more energy efficient in the home. Once they've done that assessment, they will also assess the individual circumstances and see if there are any discounts that you would be eligible for, such as the water help discount or the water home discount as well. So we find that quite a lot of people are eligible for them and don't know, so they will also then help you apply for those as well. And then they will also, if required, so this is where I come in as well. I have been finding recently that with the imminent rise of the cost of fuel, that we are finding a lot of people are struggling to pay their bills and they're having to choose between heating and eating. So that's where we come in. So if eligible, and I'll go through the eligibility criteria afterwards, we would then be able to refer them to Thinking Works, and we would be able to issue a £28 fuel voucher, which can come via text, email, or in the post, and is then redeemed at the post office. So that is for gas and electric, as long as they have prepayment meters. So the eligibility criteria to get help from Thinking Works is to be within Merton, and then there's 3 criteria that you have to meet just one of. So you either have to be over 65, have a long-term health condition, or be on a low income. So one of the 3, and please do get in touch, we will be able to help you, even if it's just advice. I also manage the handy person service as well. So that is in partnership with Merton Council. Our handy person is called Chris, and he is employed by the council. And it's a free service for Merton residents that are either over 65 or have a long-term health condition. And he can basically do anything that doesn't require a professional. So put up shelves, curtain rails, refill the bath, clear block drains, anything like that. And again, all referrals for those come to me. And other than that, so we are mainly focusing on just establishing external professional relationships and getting the word out and doing quite a lot of talks at the moment. So that is really our sort of main focus at the moment.
Is that all you're going to give us?
But that's all I've got at the moment.
I tell you what,
basically everything in a nutshell.
Sorry, I was being facetious. Would anybody like to ask Olivia any questions about the project, the Warm Well project? First of all, were you all aware of it before Olivia spoke? Was there anybody who wasn't? Well, there you go.
There we go. So I didn't need to say too much at all.
No, that's fair dues, fair dues. But yeah,
Nick,
yes, mate.
I remember the Warm and Well where when Kelly was with us, we were invited round to go to the offices and
we did,
and get genned up on that. This is exactly the same project, isn't it?
It is indeed, Dennis. Have they put any of your shelves up yet? Sorry, I'm just my colleague I think might be over 65.
Yes.
But Any questions seriously for Olivia? No?
Yeah, perhaps.
Sally?
Yes, Olivia, thank you. You're keeping cool in the summer and you're keeping warm in the winter through
Yes.
that I've shared with residents. But how many people are you finding from Merton are taking you up on the offers for further advice than the packs you send out?
Significant, actually. A lot of them are self-referrals because I will do external talks as well as talks to We Have activity program here, and then individuals think, oh, I need a bit of advice on this, a bit of advice on that, and then simply what they do is get in touch. And then once I give them a little bit more information on the project and what they could be entitled to, everyone tends to be very happy to have a little bit of advice and a telephone and home assessment.
Well, Peter.
Yes, thank you, Nick. The handy person service, I'm sure if people knew about this, you'd be overwhelmed in no time. So, I mean, just for record, it doesn't include gardening, does it?
He does not. He doesn't do gardening or decorating.
No, not decorating. Okay. But otherwise, sort of fixing shelves and changing light fitments. What's yeah.
Yeah, all of that. What I can do is I will send Chris the poster that he might be able to send around if required. I've also put my email in the chat for anybody that would like to email me any questions as well.
Fabulous.
Okay.
Ed.
Thank you.
Ed.
Thanks, Nick. Yes, does the handyman, back to as Peter said, the handyman, does he repair fences by any chance?
Ooh.
Just I have two elderly residents that are struggling to get their fence repaired at the moment, and I'm sure he's rushed, but they're both qualify on so many of those reasons on long-term health and age, and this would be useful to pass on, really.
Yes, absolutely. So he doesn't tend to do any work on the external side of the property, but we do tend to take things on an individual case. So please feel free to email me with the details, confidentially, of course, and I can take a look.
Thank you.
Of course.
What Ed's come up with there, though, and this is more for Chris, quite honestly, than it is for yourself. There are an awful lot of fences down at the moment.
Absolutely.
I remember last time it was really, really difficult getting things repaired. I know that Clarion do quite a lot on it, though probably not enough. But there's an awful lot within the private sector who homeowners, etc., who genuinely do end up in despair because they can't get hold of fences. So, Chris, do we have any advice? Do you know if we're giving any advice out for people who need fence repairs? Mr. Withington?
Remember to come off mute. I'm not aware of any, but I can ask around.
Would you do that? I would be really grateful, because it is something which is a big problem throughout Merton, or throughout the United Kingdom for some reason. I shouldn't imagine there's a service for getting trampolines done off roofs, but
Nick, can I ask a question?
well, the childs are going to ask a question first, but after Daisy, hi.
Hi, can you hear us?
We certainly can.
Good. Over fences, the council won't collect as a bulky item your old fence panels, and that leads to fly tipping. Now, I'm sure that wooden fence panels are probably quite good at being recycled. So why does the council not regard them as an acceptable bulky item? It's very difficult to get rid of them, even when you need new ones.
I wish I knew. I really did wish I knew. I mean, it's probably because they are quite a difficult item to actually load onto the van and everything. But Chris, can you look that one up for us as well? Thank you very much. Dennis.
Yes, going back to when we were invited round, I wonder, you were planning to go around, or your organisation was planning to go around to all the daycare organisations like Friends in St Helier and the Merton Morden Guild and so on. Being as that probably happened 2 or 3 years ago, and now they're opening up again after a long time. Are you planning to go again?
Absolutely. So at the moment, we are currently going through all our contacts and just re-establishing those communications and those relationships as well, because we're finding there's been quite a lot of staff turnover during the COVID period as well. We've already got in touch with quite a few of them. I've already been to the Merton Morden Guild and things like that. So absolutely, we will be treating that as a priority.
I would imagine that in this weather, they will be needing what everybody else is needing, but they won't be able to do anything for themselves.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Olivia. Is there anybody else who's got any questions for her? Well, you may think you've got it off lightly, but it's lovely to see you, and we are genuinely appreciative of the work the Guild does, this and so many other things that you do. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. You appreciate that most of us watching you today are councillors or occasionally ex-councillors, but throughout Merton, we love the Guild. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, Chris, what we got next?
Brief talk about the community forums. So there's a bit of navel gazing for us here. So I've got a quick presentation, and then love some feedback from everyone, if that's okay.
Yep.
So we're looking to review how the community forums work. It's been 10 years since we last had any major changes. We used to have a neighbourhood governance officer who left 10 years ago. So it's about time we had a good look under the bonnet and see what changes we can make to help the forums move along. And obviously the last couple of years, things have changed quite radically. We've been doing them like this on Zoom instead of in person. So we've learned a lot about the technology, about what works and what doesn't. So we'll be looking to see how we can incorporate that technology going forward. And when we do go back to in-person meetings, how we can try and keep some of the best aspects of working online as well. And then also last year with the Your Merton engagement program, part of the feedback we got was that people were really interested in participating in some of those decisions on issues like high streets and open spaces that people were talking about as a priority in that exercise. So how can we reflect that with the forums, and how can we try and engage a wider audience in those topics in particular? What we want to know is what people think works currently, and also what doesn't work or what could be improved. And also what other approaches are there out there that we could adapt or learn from or incorporate into what we're already doing. So I've had a look at what else goes on in other boroughs and to see what other models are being used across London. We found sort of broadly 8 different models working across the whole of London, including quite a lot of something similar to us in terms of these forums and relatively similar approaches. So I'm going to run through some of the other approaches that are taken across London and give you a sense of what else is going on, and then happy to take any questions on those or also any feedback on what we do currently. So a few boroughs do these area committees, and these are kind of formal structured committees, part of the council operation. They run in a similar way to a scrutiny or a planning meeting. They're quite formal in that sense. They're obviously formed by the councillors for that area, so normally it's a multiple ward approach, often with co-opted residents associations or other groups that will sit on the panel with them. And as with, say, scrutiny or other things, there's also usually a slot in which the public can speak at the meeting about those issues. So an example will be our neighbours over in Sutton. They've had their area committees for some years now. And in their case, there's usually a small budget, and those committees are tasked with spending in the local area. There's a few who run externally managed forums or networks. So a local organisation is either employed or has volunteers who will run something. So that gives it independence from the council, but also means you've not got necessarily the administration there to take the tasks as we often do. But they're external to the council, and in some cases might be an existing residents group who've taken on that role. There also can be a mix of either public meetings or online discussion boards or forums. and that's something Lambeth have been running recently. So if you look at, for example, the Brixton wards, they've got an online discussion group, and when we get over COVID, they'll go back to having face-to-face meetings as well. Quite a few councils have moved over to digital approaches, so wholly digital approaches, either panels or boards. So a panel is where you recruit a representative group of residents and then ask them to do regular online surveys. That gives you good feedback on various topics, from whatever it might be, climate change to social care, and allows them to give you that good feedback, and you keep topping up the panel as you go along. But obviously it's not open. It means if you want to say something about it, you're not necessarily invited to participate in that scheme. Kensington and Chelsea run a panel amongst other boroughs. Whereas the discussion boards, these are online discussion groups, so they are open, and anyone can join in and have their say. There's obviously moderation issues with that to make sure everyone's behaving nicely. Barking and Dagenham have something similar, run for each ward, so on a quite small scale. At the other end of the spectrum, the GLA has the Talk London programme where anyone can sign up and talk about London-wide issues. Quite a few boroughs do question time events. These are, you're familiar with the concept from the TV show, a public meeting where you've got the elected administration or councillors or the mayor where it's relevant, or senior officers who attend and are questioned by members from the floor. They can either be borough-wide events or quite locally focused. So, for example, in Wandsworth, across the border, they move around each ward. So they will normally get to each ward every couple of years, having sort of one event every month. And at the other end of the spectrum, the Mayor of London and all the GLA members attend quarterly sessions, usually hosted by someone from LBC or quite a high-profile event, and broadcast online as well. And then are quizzed by members of the public, and they move those around London. So you can have them at quite a big scale. Citizen assemblies have become quite on vogue over the last few years. This is where you select randomly a group of residents and invite them to come along and discuss an issue in quite a lot of detail, give them evidence from experts, and then ask them to recommend a set of solutions. And then that can become council policy going, or impact on council policy. They became quite popular, particularly around climate change. A lot of councils were doing them to get residents to suggest solutions for dealing with the climate emergency or regeneration issues. So NUM have been doing quite a lot of these recently. And then there are some councils that are doing councillor-led structures, which is a bit more loose. So each ward is doing their own thing and doing it in a structure that's right for them, hosted by those councillors and managed by them as well. So it's quite, focused geographically and on those particular issues, but not centrally directed. There's obviously a coordination behind the scenes, so that information feeds back in, but it's something then that's led by the councillors rather than by officers. And Ealing have got something going on in that way. Waltham Forest used to, but they seem to have changed that quite recently. So at the moment, we've got a survey up, and if you go to that bit on the website at the Merton.gov.uk/consultations, you'll find the survey there, along with all the other things that are going on at the moment. And part of that survey is feedback on what we're doing in the forums currently, both in terms of over the last couple of years when we've been online, and then prior to that when we're meeting in person. And then the second bit of the survey is around those other options and what might work better, what we can borrow from, and get people's feedback on that. The survey will run until the 4th of April, and then we'll have a bit of time to look at those responses, think about what we might do. And obviously there's an election coming up, as I'm sure colleagues are aware, at the beginning of May. So there'd be something to bring to the whoever forms the new administration, and go through the scrutiny process as well, to make sure everyone's involved in that process and look at it in terms of our wider plans for how we're going to engage people around the Merton 2030 agenda, and things like the resident survey and what other projects that we might use. So the whole thing looks like a sensible coordinated package, because it is a sensible coordinated package. So happy to take any questions or any comments on what I've said, or any feedback on the forums in general. Nick, you're on mute.
I'm not anymore. I'm not. Sorry. Yeah, I will take questions. Before I do, I'd like to just take the opportunity to say, you know, how grateful, I think I'm speaking for all of us, how grateful I am that you do the work that you do, Chris. I know it's an often thankless task, but I'd be surprised if anybody in Merton knows the opinions of the borough better than you do. And this is yet another example of how you engage, and you should be very proud. Right, in order. It's not in order of who put their hands up first, it's in the order of who I've got on the screen. I'm going to take Dennis, and then Peter, and then Sally, and then DC. Do I pronounce that right, DC? DC? I'll never know because you're on mute.
So it'll be me.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, right. Dennis first then.
Yes, about community forums. Back in the day, when I chaired it, there was a lot more input from residents and a little bit less from officers coming forward with things. And I think we've somewhat been taken over by groups like Nextdoor. How do you feel it was possible to try and join these systems together to try and make it work as one?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. We've only fairly recently joined Nextdoor. We did that last year as a council, and I've certainly been promoting the forums on Nextdoor to try and encourage engagement. So far, it hasn't resulted in any new people coming to a forum. That may be because of the online element, or that may be because we haven't been meeting in person. So we certainly use it as a way of gathering intelligence and feedback, so it goes into the mix. We do that across the social media channels. So if we see chatter about issues, we can flag that up and feed that into the service. Something like Nextdoor possibly means that things like discussion boards are fairly redundant because it already exists. So why create something that is already out there? But equally, it's a private enterprise. People may feel uncomfortable about giving out their details. That's certainly the case with Facebook nowadays. So yeah, those are all difficult balances, and we're learning as we go. Each time a new tool comes along, we've got to get used to it, work out how it operates. Certainly Nextdoor's a bit less lively than say Twitter is, but each time there's a new platform, we have to work out how it works and how to get the best out of it. I certainly take the point about the balance between input and officer presentations. Obviously, as we've gone online, I think certainly to start with, I was quite cautious about how interactive they could be, and I think as we've gone along, we've put more interactivity back in. But that was, again, we were learning, and I think initially we were quite cautious about how that would work, and so it was quite presentation heavy. When we go back to in person, hopefully we can realter that balance a little bit.
Okay, Peter.
Yes, thank you. I think it would be true to say that Morden has always been the least well supported of the forums. I've always looked through the reports when we have our council meetings, and Rains Park gets a good audience, Wimbledon to some extent. I wonder whether frequency is a factor here. We're down to just 2 forums a year, are we not, with Morden, where others are still meeting quarterly, 4 a year? Or maybe only 2 a year. We almost drop out of visibility, really. People forget that it is there, is a consideration. But otherwise, Chris, can you comment on why you think some attract bigger audiences than others?
I've got theories, but they're possibly more anecdotal than evidentiary, but it does vary. So across the 5, Colliers Wood is generally the worst attended, and that's been only annual since that for a decade now, since we made the change with losing the full-time post that looked after these. Mitcham and Morden are both every 6 months, and they are broadly similarly attended. There's not a lot in between the two. Rose Park is the most consistent, certainly when it's in person. That was all regularly 50, 60 people, most sessions. Wimbledon's always been incredibly variable. I've had 100 at Wimbledon and I've had 4. It really veers between the extremes depending on this, what's at the agenda, and what else is going on, and seasonal factors sometimes. To some extent, the frequency reflected the audiences that we were getting before that. So even when it was 4 times a year, the audience was much smaller in Mitcham and Morden and Colliers Wood than it was in Wimbledon and Rose Park. That may reflect on the demographics of the area. It's always tricky to know exactly what drives that. Certainly, I think I would make a case that in particular Colliers Wood and parts of Morden, part of the issue is success of some of the established residents' associations. So for Colliers Wood in particular, that's a resident association that regularly gets 60 plus residents at a meeting and then sends one rep to the community forum who reports back. So to some extent, we're duplicating work that's already being done better by somebody else. And if I may say so, I've also had that experience with Merton Park Residents Association meetings where you regularly top out at 100 people at a meeting, but only 1 or 2 will come to this. So, in that sense, we're a victim of your success. Whereas perhaps in other parts of the borough, there isn't as established resident associations. I mean, it's not true in Rains Park. They've got a very good resident association there too. In Wimbledon, perhaps they're a bit more fragmented. They're much smaller residents associations up that way. They tend to be quite focused geographically rather than ward-wide. And Mitcham similarly, I think there's a lot of quite small groups up that way. So there's always been a whole set of very odd dynamics that are difficult to work out what drives it. And we've tried a number of different ways of promoting them. We've tried a number of different ways of managing them and doing them. And I've never felt that we've cracked the nut, as it were, and established all 5 on a similar level. I think Rains Park, which is largely run by the Rains Park Association nowadays, kind of has found a level, and all of the others vary enormously and go up and down. So that's part of the reason to look at it again.
Thanks.
No, thank you.
Sally, I know you've got to go soon, so. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Chris, I just wanted to ask you, the website you put up for the consultation, I have a digital newsletter that I send out about weekly. Are you happy for me to share that website with the residents?
Absolutely, please do.
Okay, that's lovely. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Oh, that was easy. Thanks, Sally. Hubert.
I expect I can be just as quick, probably. I really just wanted to ask you all as individual councillors whether you had considered having meetings in your wards in the way that we do. You obviously don't have to be independent to do it.
So it is a good question. I mean, we do, but not regularly, and not in a particular format. I mean, what we tend to do is we tend to have public meetings when there is an item of interest going on. The last time St Helier had a public meeting, tell me if I'm wrong about this, Dennis, is when we were talking about the changeover in which parts of the ward were going where, because the borderlines have changed. But you know, that's one topic. I know I've been at them over various sort of planning decisions over parking. You can always get people to come to meetings about parking. You know, but so we've always tended to do it that way rather than on a just, you know, regular basis. I don't know if that's the same for everybody here. Possibly not. Anybody else want to chip in on that one?
Well,
Nick,
can I say?
sorry.
Can I say that when I did chair the forum and I tried it for 3 years, it would actually, the knowledge of the meeting was normally followed. If there was a contentious issue, then that always got more members turning up, more residents turning up. And once where, I mean, I would think now if the forums were now live face to face, things like the festivals in the park and the discussion with people there, that would bring members in, because controversy always works.
Dennis, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think Sally was going to talk about what she does as a councillor within her ward.
Oh, I don't want to interrupt, Dennis. Sorry. No, I was just going to say, I walk a dog, so therefore you talk to very many people, as well as we go out once a week to meet local residents. But we have regular coffee mornings. Before COVID, we'd have 4 a year, and we'd have a particular focus. We might have the local police, we might have something about parking enforcement, and we supply homemade cakes at that, so it gets a good audience, and we can get between 40 and 50. The most we ever had was about 100 people to discuss the St Helier option. But we do listen, and one of the things that came out of it was speeding on our roads. So we work with the local police for doing regular speed checks on our roads. So we found coffee mornings was a really good way. It was relaxed, it was friendly, although it did get heated. So that was just our particular way that we found quite successful, really. Does that help, Hubert?
Yes, thank you.
Can I add something? I think forums would be more successful if they actually could achieve something definite. And I was interested in the area committees with the budget, because it occurs to me at the moment that the Section 106 money allocation is really not very efficient at all. And if the area forums could have a budget, such as the 106 money, to spend on the projects that they identify as necessary and need to be done, rather than the very limited range of options we have at the moment, it would make more sense than future Merton spooning the money out in very small quantities and possibly rather irrationally. I mean, we've got so many daffodil bulbs, but there are other things that need doing. So we'll get a fortnight of wonderful blossom, and then we've got another 50 weeks of nothing. I'm sure it could be improved.
I'm going to stick up for the daffodil bulbs. I know that Sally has done some tremendous work in that area, and I know as well that Nick and a lot of his colleagues have done an awful lot of planting too. So you know, but I do take the point. I don't think I was being facetious.
Can I say just to, sorry, Mrs. Child, but it came out of the more park benches. So we had a programme of installing park benches, but they're £1,500 each, and repairing playground flooring equipment, and that's very expensive. So that's come from residents, issues that they've been concerned with. So we do try and share it around, and daffodils cheer everybody up in the spring.
When you need it the most.
Criticising them. I think they're fine, but there are other things.
I know that Elspeth's had her hand up for a long time. Now, take Nick after that.
Two quick things, just suggestions. When we have the soapbox item on the agenda, I believe Rains Park puts it first on the agenda. And I think that would be a good idea, because very often when we've been having the meetings face to face, we run out of time and we're told, oh, we have to be out of the building by 9:15 or 9:30, whatever it is. I would put it first. However, you have a limit of how long anybody can spout about anything that they want to, complain about. So people can have a minute, 2 minutes, and then they have to shut up, because
That's a
otherwise
very
they'll
good point.
go on forever. The other thing, the timing of the meetings, it's a bit odd. We've got one now, it's February. The next one isn't until October. That's 8 months. And then you go 4 months and you've got another meeting. It doesn't quite make sense. And I just wondered, would it make more sense to have one March, September, or April, October? I know it's getting near the local elections, so this year that might not work. But it just seems odd to have such a big gap and then a quite short one. That's me. Over and out.
Thank you.
I can answer the question on the calendar bit, if that helps. The council calendar is a gigantic movable feast that I'm only a small cog in, trying to negotiate dates amongst all the other things. And unfortunately, we have got into this pattern of October and February, which isn't ideal, but March is the busiest month for council meetings. It is the most frenetic, and when we lose the last week of March a lot of the time because of the pre-election period. So this year we wouldn't be able to go beyond the 28th of March, because that's when we get into the pre-election period and public meetings in particular stop. So at the moment I've only got 2 slots in March, and because Wimbledon and Rains Park have met in December, they get the March slots, because otherwise we'd be going December to February with them, and that's even closer. So unfortunately, that's the way it's played out, and it's the same bookings for next year. There is a logic to say that because the gap is now so close between October and again, September is another busy month, between October and February, perhaps we could squeeze a third one in the summer. But generally, the summer ones are the least well attended. So it's a difficult one to get right.
Thanks, Chris.
Nick.
Thank you, Nick. So I'll quickly touch on the daffodils. You are quite right. In Cannon Hill, we have planted 12,000 actually over this year, 3.5 last year. To answer to the child's, not a single penny came from council tax money. It was all donated, so it was private. And with regard to the SIL money, let's not forget we also have the neighbourhood fund. We were successful in bidding to redo Martin Way. We submitted a bid for £53,000 with 2 residents. I signed off on it with other colleagues to promote it, so that the opportunity does exist from that SIL money and Section 106 money to apply for bigger projects. And not, I appreciate we've got the ward allocation fund, which is 15,000 per ward, which is quite limited in its scope, and that's something I think going forward we should look to see if we should perhaps widen that scope. That definitely, I think, is something we should look at. But for the bigger projects, we do have the opportunity to work with residents and move that forward. So I would, I've taken on a lot of board here tonight, actually, and something that jumped to me, we often talk about the bridging of bridging the gap, which we haven't managed to achieve. And we've dissected our areas within to 5, Colliers Wood, Rains Park, and everything else. I wonder whether I throw this out there that perhaps maybe, especially given Chris's comments about residents association sending just one representative and then reporting back, maybe annually we should have a complete get together of the borough and put everyone together and let everyone talk about the difficulties they're facing within the east, the west, wherever. And maybe that's a way of starting that conversation, because I, as leader of the opposition, I am very conscious that we do have a split and that we are in ways being put into compartments. And I think maybe we should have once a year a big push to bring the resident associations together, bring the residents themselves together, and let's talk about the borough as a whole.
Very interesting idea. Have you heard that one before, Chris?
No, it's a nice, an interesting idea. One option or one model we could look at, and it's something that's interested me for years, is how we integrate better with the residents associations and look at how we can use them to gather intelligence and equally give them somewhere to come to ask questions and get feedback. Obviously, they're usually in a lot of contact with the local councillors as well, but have a much better conduit there. And if we could do that through an annual get together of those organisations, I think that would be quite a powerful exercise. So it's an interesting point to think about and possibly include. Yeah,
I've got to say, brief anecdote. I knew somebody who worked in Mitcham but lived in Merton Park, and his neighbour of 12 years was moving, and they got into that conversation that you get into when you're actually moving, and the neighbour said, "Where do you work then?" He said, "Mitcham." He said, "Really? Where's that?" Genuinely didn't know where Mitcham was. That is one of our problems. That as a borough, we are just naturally very, very, very split up. But I do take the point. It's a very good point, Nick, that it would be lovely to actually get all residents sitting together and discussing things equally. Right. So any other questions to Chris? Because if not, I've got a couple. Not questions, but suggestions. First of all, we've already heard about different areas. Are there any other different approaches that you haven't tried, Chris? That could take into account the differences that the areas have. And the second one is, Pauline, I'm hearing you. We're all hearing you. Do you want to put yourself on mute briefly?
Yeah.
Youth engagement. These panels tend to be for older people, talking about older people's concerns. We know that young people, number one, have specific concerns of their own, and number two, do feel disenfranchised. At Sally's panel the other day, we actually heard from the youth panel, but this is another area where we could get young people far more involved. In fact, involved at all would be a good start. Has there ever been any work done on that, Chris?
So we did try many years back some sessions around kind of intergenerational work, and it didn't quite work, and we couldn't quite find the level for it. By the very nature of these meetings, the timing of them, and the sorts of topics on offer, I would be staggered if we were getting significant numbers of young people coming to them. It's not a format that they feel confident or comfortable with. And at the moment, our colleagues in Children's Schools and Families have got set up quite a lot of structures to engage with young people through the Youth Parliament, young advisors, looked after children's group as well. So what we tend to do is tap into the infrastructure that's designed specifically for those audiences. I mean, historically, the most difficult group to engage with is actually slightly older than that. It's the people in their 20s and 30s who are largely commuter-based and haven't yet had families. And therefore, their interactions with the council services are rather limited to the bins. And they're not involved in education yet because they don't have children. So with that audience, they're not going to engage in meetings like this. The more successful approaches tend to be going to where they are, standing outside railway stations and trying to grab them as they come through. So you always have to design any kind of engagement to be relevant to the audience that you want to reach. With some audiences, digital is going to be better because it's more convenient for them. They can do it on the train on the way home, or at a moment it's convenient for them. It's not got to be at a set time. And also they're used to interacting digitally with other organisations and getting immediate responses. So they'll post something about Tesco's and they'll get a response back from Tesco's customer services. For a council, that's quite a challenge because our decision-making structures are a bit slower than Tesco's. They want to engage on an issue, but our committee meeting to decide on an issue is in 2 months' time. Or the forum where you can come and talk about that issue is not till October. So it doesn't work for the audiences that are used to a different kind of approach. So to try and design something that is right for everybody, I think would be quite a challenge. It's making sure you've got all the different mechanisms in place that all those audiences can engage with when they want to and how they want to. I'm not sure we've got that right across the board yet, but certainly with young people, there's a lot of mechanisms in place that's sort of managed in parallel to this. And so for something like the Youth Parliament, they're meeting monthly. They're discussing a whole wide range of issues. It comes a lot from the young people as well. They plan those meetings. They're heavily involved in it. And there'll also be pizza available. And, it's quite a different tone to the sorts of things that we're able to do. Yeah.
That's what you're missing. You're missing pizza.
Pizza, yeah.
I always said get free beer.
Well, we used to do teas and coffees, and that got logistically quite challenging. And budgetary constraints stopped that. And if anyone remembers the Merton cookie when that was still around, that I do miss those. Yeah, we can do things on a bigger scale, and I think we get a bigger audience if we did.
Thank you very, very much indeed. Yes, it's very. Do you know this is giving me real food for thought. And Nick has said the same. I'm sure that the rest of us equally feel that it kind of opens your eyes to something which, to my mind, has just something that's always happened. It hasn't. I do appreciate it, Chris. Right. Has anyone got anything else to ask Chris on this subject, or shall we move on? Peter.
Yeah, I know you want to move on, Chair, but just looking at some of these options you talked to us about, Chris, citizen assemblies and so on. I mean, we really would be into big budget territory there, wouldn't we?
I think we would struggle to deliver them on the capacity we currently have. Yes, I think, and they tend to be on quite specialist topics. So it's how often you'd be doing them, or if they were part of a wider project. So, for example, if there is a lot of money around for Morden regeneration, then you could run a citizen assembly as part of the package of activity for that project. But having them as a regular standalone thing to talk about things more generally, we wouldn't be able to do that with the existing framework.
And do I recollect we used that approach for when we were reducing from 3 to a 2-tier educational system?
It was a bit before my time, but it's quite possible.
Oh, okay, yeah. But I do remember that was quite a big deal, and involved a series of meetings, and people had to get immersed in the subject, so they're knowledgeable before they deliver a view, aren't they?
Yeah, there's different ways of different models of doing it, but the key thing about citizen assemblies is kind of the randomness. That is like jury service. You get a letter through the post that invite you to participate. So it's not an open format for stakeholders to come. And generally, we've favoured the kind of, well, if you want to come, you can come, rather than inviting specific audiences and excluding anybody. So it would be a cultural shift for us, but not impossible to do.
Thank you,
Nick. You got another question?
Just very quickly, really just to endorse your earlier comments, Nick, and thanking Chris for all his hard work. It's much appreciated.
There you go. Good to be loved, isn't it?
It's very nice.
Have we got anything else tonight, Chris?
I know it's just on the open forum then.
Right. Okay. Anyone want to bring anything up? That
I have got a couple of things that came in advance.
Okay.
So first is something that we've talked about quite a few times on this, and I asked Future Merton if there was any update on the Morden regeneration. They said there wasn't anything specific at the moment, but they have recently updated the web page with the latest news on. So if anybody is interested, you want to go to merton.gov.uk/more Morden, and there's an update on the current state of play.
Can I interrupt him now, Nick?
Sorry?
Can I interrupt there?
I'd let Chris finish. We may come back to it in a second. What was the second?
The other one was a bit more technical. We had an email in asking a question around 5G masts, and asking about the felling of trees to accommodate masts, and why we're not using wired comms instead. I don't know the answer to that, so I'm chasing the development control team to give me a response, and I'll include that in the notes of the meeting.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take Elspeth first, Dennis, and I'm going to come back to you.
It's just a quickie. And sadly, I would have asked Martin if he'd been able to attend. The letter that came out today about solar panels, it's interesting, and I think we might be sort of looking at this, but there is absolutely no indication anywhere of costs. And it would have been helpful if there had just been a ballpark figure to say, for a terrace house, it might cost between A and B, for a semi-detached between C and D, just to give you a vague idea, because we went down this road some years ago and the prices were so exorbitant, we just thought we can't afford that. So I just have been interested to know, maybe they've come down, maybe they haven't. So I think it would have been helpful just to have some idea.
I tell you what, Elspeth, not only would it have been helpful, but we will feed that one back. Chris, can you feed that one back? And we will get that out to you. I'm sure we will.
Lovely.
Because
Thank
you're
you.
absolutely right.
Thank you.
Dennis, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you earlier. You want to go back to Morden regeneration?
No, that's fine. I would be rather sceptical about Morden regeneration, because the first meeting that Maxi Martin and Mickey Spacey and I organised in 2004 or 5 was very well attended. And we've had 3 or 4 or 5 meetings since then that we've organised in St Helier Ward, and they've got fewer and fewer because it's all promise and no performance. And that's what they tell you. Don't tell me about this. You told me last time and the time before. It's not happened, so I'm not bothering to come. So I'd be very careful where you went with that one.
I don't want to really open up how good, bad, or otherwise the regeneration.
It does say
it's a
open
good
forum
point.
on my.
It's a good point. Yeah. It certainly does.
It's just a word of warning.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, good point. Right. Anybody else got any comments, queries, whatever at this particular stage? No. It's pretty. Mark Gale's just joined us at the point where we're running out of things to talk about.
I've been here all the time. I've just been on mute.
You've been.
When you brought up the more Morden, we did have a meeting specifically in the forum where a presentation was made saying they had designed a website which was going to be released within weeks of the forum, and that was about 2 years ago, and that never happened. So I'd agree with Dennis that it's all talk and no action from the more Morden team. So they've registered a website, moremorden.co.uk. Dickie Art was speaking about it to them in the Morden forum, and we were promised that within a couple of weeks it would all be live, and it never ever materialised. They registered the web domain, but never actually did anything.
Chris, do you know anything about that?
From recollection, yeah, I do recall them talking to that stage. From my understanding of what's happened is that they were looking at a commercial partner, and then COVID came along and everything got stuffed. So progress didn't get made. So I think at that point they kind of had to withdraw. There was a marketing agency involved who were going to do a lot of that was jointly appointed by us and TfL. And then with COVID, the whole market stopped. So rather than spend money with no progress, I think contracts were pulled at that point. So that may explain why that happened. The timing I'd have to check with them on, but that's my recollection.
Right. Yeah. So any other questions or things to bring up? This is your big chance, folks. No. Oh, sorry. Desi Hubert.
Yeah, I can beat you on Morden regeneration. We were looking at that in 1990 in great detail. That's how long. What I wanted to ask is, what progress is there on the car park? Because Morden will die if Peel House car park, especially the lower part, keeps closed for very long. And as far as I can make out, absolutely nothing is happening at the moment. So can somebody give an update on that, please?
Peter, it's in your ward, I think. Can you?
Well, yes, it is indeed, and Des's question is very pertinent. We don't have an answer at the moment. I have been in touch with Ben Stevens of Parking Services to just push for the turn of the Kenley Road car park to full use. I think its use as a testing centre is now at an end, but of course it's still a bit of a walk from Sainsbury's store itself. So the sooner the Peel House car park is brought back into use, the better. And as Desi says, and as comments on next door have said, there seems to be, frankly, bugger all happening there. So
is it currently unsafe? Is that the problem with it?
It is unsafe, but it would be good to see people walking around in hard hats and taking measurements. And the process is that a survey had to be undertaken, and then the scale of the repairs needed would be would be put out to tender.
Sounds like the Ravensbury Bridge again. Let's hope not. Let's hope not. I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Anyway, no, I did say that. Anyway, yes, that's an interesting one. Okay, I was just thinking, DC, when I was first elected in Lower Morden, an elderly gentleman came up to me. Bear in mind, this is 1994. I was elected, and said, after the war, Winston Churchill said that Garth Road was going to become fully residential again, or be fully fields. When's it going to happen, councillor? I think that one wins. Anyway, any other questions? Any other questions for Chris or for anybody here? No? Well, colleagues, I think as that's the last, that's the last thing on the agenda. Is that right, Chris?
Yep, that's right.
Then this is my chance to say, as far as whatever we call this thing is the Morden thing. It's goodbye and thank you for all the fish. I've had a wonderful time chairing it, and it'll be somebody else's turn next. Okay.
Thank you, Nick.
All the best. Okay. I'm going to say bye for now. Bye to everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.